Okay, it's time for our aviation report, and this week, unfortunately, Rich Kaplan is going to touch on a airplane tragedy which happened in Cuba, and to fill us in, I give you our airplane enthusiast. He is Rich Kaplan.
Thank you, Howie. Well, this Friday, Cubana suffered a severe loss when one of the aircraft they chartered from a Mexican company crashed just after takeoff. The Boeing model 737-200 had 110 passengers on board, and many critics are wondering why such an old airplane, mainly this plane which rolled off the assembly line in 1979, was still flying. What's interesting is that Cuba's not like any other country. They have endured embargoes, they've endured a lot. Their aviation industry was once the pride of the Caribbean. Now it is in shambles. They operate aircraft older than most people could ever imagine, and it's hard to fathom flying on a jet that old. What's frightening, Howie, is that this is a crash that didn't have to happen. If they had access to Western technology, they probably could have bought Airbus, they could have bought Boeing, modern aircraft. Cuba is becoming such a major tourist attraction, and the problem is the government can't keep track of everything. They have an aging infrastructure. Their cars date back to the 1960s. The roads haven't been serviced. This is all according to the New York Times. And what's frightening is that from an airline's perspective, Cubana dates back to 1929. That's when they started flying. And their most modern aircraft are all Russian built. They are Aviation aircraft, I believe Aviation IL-96, and also Antonov Model 140s, which they use for regional flights. As an aviation enthusiast, I'm a little puzzled as to why these aircraft weren't being used on this particular flight. But it's been alluded to me, and I've been reading up on this, that the airline has been plagued with severe financial difficulties. They grounded most of their domestic fleet and is in the process possibly of collapsing. So this could very well be a crash that does end this airline altogether. But what's interesting though is that the black boxes were recovered and they are in good condition. That's a blessing, because at least we'll get an idea as to what happened. From what I've been able to extrapolate from the info that's been coming in from the news and from Reuters and everything, is that the aircraft took off for Havana, bound for, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, I don't want to offend any of my Cuban viewers, but Joaquin, I believe, I can't pronounce it, but it was heading to Joaquin from Havana. There were 114 passengers on board, 110 of them perished, 20 of them were priests, evangelical priests. They were part of a Cuban Catholic church outing. And it's very, very tough because Cuba's not a country that, like Russia, doesn't give a lot of information as to what happened. So whatever I get out of there, I'm lucky I'm able to get. And CNN has been on top of this from the get-go, as has been the BBC. Those are the two I want to credit, along with the New York Times. They have given us perspective in the sense that the aircraft took off, made a turn to the right, and then nosedived, which leads me to think that it may have been engine failure, but I'm not certain. If it is engine failure, then it falls on the Mexican government, because this was an airplane that was chartered from a Mexican company, Global Aviation, who already are being investigated for numerous safety violations. So this is a very big tragedy, Howie, and it could have an impact on charters in that region for a long time.
Okay, Rich, thank you so much for the aviation report. Stay right there, Rich.